Your car is not a private place. Think of it like a rolling confessional booth that also tracks your location, takes video footage of everywhere you go, and even collects data about what you do cozied up with someone in the back seat.
Your phone book, your call log, your text messages, your photos, your social media feeds, and every single place you've been. It is all up for grabs, and people want that information.
The data collection in modern cars is out of control. How did we get here, where the invasiveness into our privacy got so bad? Why are we all apparently okay with this, that we let it happen? Well, simply put, no one really understood what was going on. And even worse, companies went out of their way to hide that they were collecting all this data. But let's back up a little. I initially intended to make just one video about car privacy, but the more I researched, the crazier it got, and this investigation soon exploded into a 6-part miniseries. Part 1 covered how the modern car is a smartphone on wheels, with hundreds of computers bolted on top that each collect all kinds of data about your activities and share it with countless entities. Your car manufacturer is collecting your information. Your information is collected by data brokers, selling it to goodness knows who. And governments are also collecting this information without needing a warrant. Mozilla summed it up well when they said that cars were the worst privacy category they'd ever reviewed. Our second video in the series looked at what we can do when we sell a car to make sure that all our personal data doesn't go with it, and what to do when buying a used car to make sure that the previous owner doesn't still have remote access. In this video, I want to cover some of the ways that data is actually sent off your car and what you can do in each case to make your car more private. Be aware that there currently are no easy fixes to the problem of car surveillance. These steps will help, but I can't just say, just drive a brand A car, they're great for privacy, or just toggle off your horrendous surveillance overreach setting. But I will talk about things like the SIM cards in cars and whether or not you should remove yours. I'll also talk about how companies trick us into handing over our data and what we need to be aware of when we're at the dealership. I'll talk about other things that we can do to push back against this insane overreach that we've somehow normalized, and expose the giant legal loophole for cars that makes it super easy for law enforcement to collect your data without a warrant. Hold on for a wild ride. The experts we interviewed for this story were Andrea, founder of the website Privacy for Cars; Woody, a renowned digital tracking expert and former instructor for a vehicle forensic company; and Sam, a famous car hacker who does awesome research into their vulnerabilities. To get started with understanding how to reduce the data collection in your car, you first need to understand how the data gets shared off your vehicle. One way is by plugging things into your car.
If you truly care about yourself and your data, you should not be plugging into the USB ports.
When we connect our phones to the car ingests a lot of our information, like contacts, messages, photos, and this information can be shared with all kinds of third parties. But the information isn't just flowing from your phone to your car.
There's a lot of information that can flow both directions.
Your phone can ingest information about your car too. It turns out that your phone is another way that your car information gets shared, through car apps like Android Auto, through other apps on your phone, and your OS itself might also be collecting certain information and sharing it.
So it's very important to be very safe any connection you make to a vehicle.
Not connecting your phone can actually go a long way to reducing the amount of data that gets shared and the number of entities that data gets shared with. But there are other things you shouldn't connect to your car either. There are companies that will try to get you to plug their devices into your car. They might look like innocent black boxes, but they're actually siphoning data and sharing it with third parties.
I was actually buying a phone for my mom, and we were at the Verizon store. The salesperson was like, we can give you a $40 discount if you just plug this device into your car.
Just plug this device into your car. What could possibly go wrong?
It was a little OBD port that had a SIM card, and it was, giving that information to the insurance company.
Wait, what? The insurance company is collecting data about your driving habits and activities directly from devices you plug into your car? Actually, insurance companies get data about your driving habits from all kinds of methods, including satellite communications and Bluetooth tags, which are other ways data is sent sent off your vehicle.
These insurance companies have an incentive to collect that data. It's being meshed into all these different like sales pipelines.
And one sales pipeline is that insurance companies partner with cell providers who convince customers to plug things into their cars, and then they all spy on your daily activities and make money from your data. Why on earth would people opt into this?
You don't really think too much about it. You're like, well, if I can get a $40 discount on a new iPhone, that's good for me, right?
You're not really told what's going on, what kind of data is being collected, or who gets access to that data.
And then people see their insurance rates going up.
But still, they don't put two and two together that this was a result of voluntarily plugging things into their car. Luckily, we can connect the dots, and by choosing not to connect external devices, whether by Bluetooth, USB, or OBD port, you actually take a big step towards keeping a lot of your data more private. Next, your car also transmits information via radio waves sent from the car itself.
Your car is a cell phone. Your car is a wireless hotspot, your car is a Wi-Fi receiver, and your car is a Bluetooth transmitter and receiver.
Wi-Fi actually isn't a common way for data to be sent off your vehicle, but it is still worth considering. If you connected your car to your home Wi-Fi, you can disconnect it and forget the network. And it's also possible your car has been programmed to automatically connect to other networks too.
One of the things you can do when you go to your dealership is you can try to shut your Wi-Fi off.
You can also ask them if your car has any remembered networks and whether they can forget those networks. They might not be able to do this, but it's worth a conversation. Now, a big way that data is sent off your car is via the SIM. Yes, your car has a SIM card in it. You could ask the dealer if they will disconnect the SIM for you. They almost surely won't though.
If the dealer won't do it, you're gonna have to unscrew like the head unit and then actually physically remove the SIM card.
It's not easy, and actually where to find the SIM completely depends on what kind of car you have.
I've seen some of them where it's like kind of underneath the glove box, and I've seen other ones where it's like in the head unit itself. You're probably gonna have to Google tutorials for like every different car.
For example, on a Tesla Model X, you need to remove the covering from under the infotainment unit, then reach your hand in blindly to find a SIM card port. While certainly not impossible, it's clearly not made for consumer access. In a BYD Atto 3, you need to remove the glove compartment, then remove an adjacent panel, then use a SIM card removal tool to extract the SIM card from that vehicle. Be aware though that you're probably not going to find any official video tutorial from car companies about where to find these SIM cards. In fact, just finding any footage was actually quite difficult, and this further proves the point that we need to raise more awareness about SIMs and how they're responsible for sharing a huge amount of our data from our cars, because many people just don't know what's going on. Now, before you all go SIM hunting, removing the SIM from your vehicle can actually cause some issues, so be aware of that.
You wouldn't be able to use too many features. The map would turn off, the radio would turn off. I've seen warnings before too, where if you remove a SIM card from a car, it just has this annoying pop-up every time you turn the car on, which says like, hey, your SIM card's disconnected.
Removing the SIM could also potentially make the car less secure.
You wouldn't have an update in a few years, so it's just not gonna work out really in the long term.
Modern cars do rely more and more on being able to connect to remote servers, but it's currently mainly for data collection, telematics, and radio. Even so, be careful what you disconnect. Next, data is extracted from your car's internal network by plugging into the OBD port when you take the car in for a service. It's worth trying to get some insight into what's going on during this process.
Have a conversation with the dealer on like what data is collected, what you can do to stop it.
Getting this conversation going really helps normalize privacy, which is super important if we ever want things to change. Be prepared though. The dealerships that we spoke to had never been asked these questions before and didn't have any answers for us.
Do you think you could tell me about the privacy policy of these cars?
I actually can't. That's beyond my scope. There's no set script I can read from and tell you what's there or not there. It's just the way the vehicles are today. They're always talking. There's nothing that car companies are providing us to tell people.
So the people selling these cars aren't even being told by the manufacturers what kind of information is being collected. How on earth are consumers meant to make informed decisions about what they're purchasing?
These companies are going out of their way to make it as like obscure as a process as possible, right? They don't want you to know what data that you're giving away, and they don't want you to kind of pay attention to it.
They hand you a document with dozens of pages hiding the data collection amongst words like partnerships and affiliates, and you don't even read it.
It gets mixed into that like sales process where you just don't realize that you're signing for it. It's not that the individuals are so like willy-nilly and they'll do whatever. It's mostly that they don't know they're doing whatever.
Less than 1 in 20 dealerships actually did tell them that, yes, this car collects data, and yes, the manufacturer and other companies have the right to share and sell this data.
It's worse than just not being told. Customers are actually being lied to about this by dealerships.
2/3 of them actively denied that this is something that really happens.
But just like that salesperson we spoke to, a lot of the time the people on the showroom floor don't actually have any idea what's going on themselves, because this data harvesting is kept super vague by the manufacturers, and the information about what's going on behind the scenes is never passed along. At the same time, I do feel that it's their responsibility to know what's in a privacy policy before asking someone to sign it. You can take things into your own hands though. Andrea's company has a free website where consumers can search for their car make and model and learn about what their car is actually collecting.
Any consumer can go and enter the VIN of their car.
And the research is simplified using graphics.
It's 10 icons, 5 to explain what data the vehicle collects, and 5 to explain where the data goes. You will learn something about your car you didn't know about, and hopefully that will make you a more informed and smarter consumer next time that you go to a dealership.
Another thing you can do at the dealership is be aware of when they try to get you to sign up for additional services like remote features, because there's actually a lot of data collection snuck into these features.
There are a number of services where you opt in, and I don't think that consumers realize that when they sign up for those services, they're also giving up an important part of their privacy. Some of these services, by the way, are safety driven.
One example is emergency response, a super useful service. If you're ever in an accident,
The trusted advisor will call you and make sure that, the police and the ambulance show up on the scene. And of course, in order to do that, you need to agree to share your geolocation. What they're less explicit about saying is that, well, now we're also going to be using your geolocation for whatever else, right? Which includes, again, collecting your data, targeting you.
they make money upselling you on this service in order to get your explicit permission to track you at all times. And then they make money selling your location data, putting it into more and more hands and making you more vulnerable as a result. There's currently no incentive for these companies to be straight with you about the surveillance that's actually going on.
I think if it was communicated more clearly, it would be a no from most people.
I mean, imagine you go to your dealership and before you buy your car and agree to all of these costly extras piled on top, they tell you explicitly,
Hey, are you okay with, Matt, the guy who works at this company, like collecting your data, selling information to this insurance company about how fast you're driving? You'd say, no way. Like, I'm not comfortable with that.
so they don't mention it. They either don't know the details themselves or they just want to make the sale. And all the other companies involved in this underground world of data harvesting don't mention it because they're making money hand over fist. So pay attention when being pitched add-ons, because a lot of these things include a big trade-off with your privacy. Remember that everything you can access in your app, like tracking your car's location, watching the cameras, remote starting, checking the temperature, connecting to the microphones, if you can do that remotely on your app, other people can access these tools remotely too. None of these apps are end-to-end encrypted, meaning that the access isn't safely just in the hands of the consumer. It's all centralized on databases where the company can also access it.
You can decide to not opt in on a number of additional services.
You can simply tell your dealership bluntly,
I'm not interested in like any sort of technology to track myself. I don't want any extra functionality like log and monitor stuff.
You can also opt out of your data being collected, shared, and sold.
but unfortunately,
When you're going against these car companies to like say like, hey, I want to opt out of giving you my data, it's a really, really, really hard fight.
one reason why is because it's not always clear-cut who's involved in each kind of data collection. Each computer in the car or app in the infotainment system might be sending data to different entities, and even contain SDKs or lines of code in the apps that the developers themselves don't understand, which is sending analytics to all kinds of other companies. Your insurance provider might have a deal with the satellite radio company. Your dealership might be ingesting data that's then sent to the manufacturer. So when you go to opt out, who do you talk to? The app developers, analytics companies, the insurance provider, the satellite radio, the dealership, or the manufacturer itself?
Your information is being collected by like all these different entities. You don't really have any privacy like in your own vehicle.
It's a hot mess, and another thing Andrea's company does is help people by automating the process of reaching out to these companies to opt out. But we need to do more. We need to push back against the normalized normalization of this data collection and change the conversation around car privacy. For example, enough of these vague 100-page agreements. We need clear privacy policies where the data collection is explicitly explained in human speak, not lawyer speak.
Where it's like upfront, it says, driving your Toyota, your data is being sent to XYZ. Is that okay with you? And if not, you can opt out.
We can start choosing dealerships that care about consumer privacy to send a market signal that these are the companies that are going to get our business, to encourage better behavior.
The good news for consumers is we start to see dealerships that are trying to make fair and transparent disclosures.
Many dealerships have started including graphics from companies like Privacy for Cars to help consumers make fully informed decisions when they make a purchase and
raise awareness of what your car is doing so you can decide before you buy it.
You can also start factoring in privacy itself when choosing your car.
Ultimately, what will drive change is companies realizing consumers do want privacy.
As well as asking questions like, what is the mileage of the vehicle? How comfortable are the seats? Start asking, how much data does the car collect? With enough people asking these questions, the salespeople are going to have to find out the answers.
Your voice matters as a consumer, especially if you're spending, $20, $40, $50, $100,000 on a vehicle. Your voice should really, really matter.
The current state of car privacy is abysmal, but perception is changing, and there are also positive regulatory changes to protect data property rights. Many states have started to pass laws intended to give consumers more control over their data. People are realizing that the more data about them that's leaked, the more vulnerable they become.
Privacy has become mainstream. It just hasn't made it into automotive yet.
But it needs to work its way to the automotive industry, because our data isn't just ending up in the hands of companies, but also governments. David Iglesias from a policy institute in Utah explained to us that there exists a major loophole in the USA for cars when it comes to warrant requirements.
Police don't need to get a warrant in order to search your car, which is now becoming more of a concern, seeing that cars are turning more into computers and something more like our smartphones with how much data they collect.
Police just need probable cause and they can search your car without a warrant. This is known as the automobile exception to the Fourth Amendment, established by the US Supreme Court. But does searching the vehicle include searching all the data in our car? Does it mean that our text messages in the infotainment system can be searched? The camera footage? Well, the answer currently is yes.
Police can easily access that sort of information.
Now that cars have evolved into computers that engorge themselves on our data, things like this warrant loophole need to be readdressed.
It's pretty crucial that we are addressing these issues in real time with legislation and also just education around what data is available and who can access it.
Utah has made headway in this regard by at least saying that the location data in cars can't be accessed without a warrant. But we have a long way to go with changing this industry.
It all starts with awareness. Technology has evolved and nobody has really educated consumers about, the implications of that from their privacy and security standpoint.
As more consumers become more aware of all the data in which vehicles are collecting, I think more consumers are going to want out and they're going to say that they're not really comfortable sharing this data. It feels just very invasive.
It's not that we have anything to hide, it's that we have the right to protect our private activities from being sold and scrutinized by thousands of companies.
And I think it does start at the individual level of being aware of all the data that's being collected and deciding to opt out.
Car manufacturers currently only see the opportunities that come from selling your data. So let's make sure that they see the opportunity of offering privacy as a feature. I can bet there will be a lot of people signing up for the first car that markets itself as a privacy car, but only if we're loud about what we want.
I think that there's actually a lot of hope that we will see good, positive changes in the industry. I think that consumers are starting to realize that there's a problem with cars. Consumers care about it. They just need to make their voice a little bit more heard.
If you made it all the way here in the video, thank you so much for sticking around. We rely on people like you to help us keep doing what we are doing. If you found this video valuable, then consider setting up a monthly tax-deductible donation by visiting nbtv.media/support, or you can show off your support by checking out our new privacy swag, which includes t-shirts like this one at shop.nbtv.media. Thank you so much for being here and for caring about this. Privacy matters. My privacy deserves data. That's not what it says. My data deserves privacy. It's a hard drive. Did you get it? And the data written on this t-shirt is pronounced data, not data, just in case any of you were wondering.